Hi Betham, Shabbat Shalom. I know it's been a few weeks since I did a video, and I'm glad to be speaking to you again as we get ready for Shabbat. There's a lot to talk about in the world, in our community, and in the Parsha. So this could be an hour-long video, and it clearly won't be. We could linger on the fact that in the last few weeks not only have there been terrible acts of anti-Semitism, but wonderful acts of Jewish unity, bringing people together from across the religious and denominational spectrum for rallies and for gatherings and for collections of Jews who are being proud Jews together. Many of you know that a rally took place in New York last week. I want you to know that I've been in conversations with Los Angeles rabbis and communal leaders to see did we feel that we needed something like that in our community as well. The determination was, at least for now, no, and we hope there won't be a need for it in the future. But we're connected to Jews around not just Los Angeles, but the country and the world. And I'll give you the nudge that in the way that many Jews are taking it upon themselves to be a little more proudly and outly Jewish than you have been before, whether it's wearing a kippah in a situation where you normally wouldn't, or just being a little more open and courageous with your Jewish identity, particularly in this era. I think that's a valuable thing. And I think it responds to what I'm going to call the inescapable arevut. Arevut is the Hebrew word for being bound to, being responsible to and for another, being connected to. Kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh, that all Jews have a certain responsibility for one another. There is an inescapable arevut that I'm going to speak about in just a minute in the Parsha that connects us to Jews of all types and persuasions. And our being a little more outwardly and publicly Jewish is a gift to the entire Jewish people. I want to share with you that tonight, whether you are signed up or not, we have another one of our beautiful Shabbat dinners with the Isla Academy, which is a local Muslim day school that Pressman Academy has developed a relationship with, and we're going to pray together, and we're going to eat together and break bread together and speak about religious life together. And it's a wonderful thing that's happening in our building, that not only are we encouraging one another to be more proudly and courageously Jewish, we're also hopefully encouraging one another to be more proudly and courageously embracing those who are not into our midst and into our spiritual lives. Total change of subject, speaking about spiritual lives, 3 weeks from tonight begins Temple Beth Am's third national conference on prayer and spirituality. Many of you know we started Kol Tefillah 2 years ago. Kol Tefillah, which is a pun. Kol with a kaf means all. Kol with a kuf means voice. Tefillah means prayer. Kol Tefillah is the voice of prayer and all of prayer. We started this kind of on a guess to see if anybody would be interested, and now this is our third time running this conference, and we have rabbis and cantors and lay people from across the country coming to spend Shabbat with us to see how we do tefillah and musical experiences at Beth Am, and also to hear other experts and immerse in what their prayer lives are like. So you can sign up for the entire weekend as a Beth Am member for less money than a non-member, as kind of a gift to you and thank you for being a member of our synagogue, obviously. Or you can choose a la carte experiences, but put it on your calendar to spend a lot of time at Temple Beth Am 3 weekends from now, January 31st to February 2nd. Okay, the Parsha and then a meditation, and they're connected. I've been living in Parshat Vayechi, which is our Parsha this week, for about 18 months. And what do I mean by that? Some of you know that I teach a class on Rashi's commentary on the Torah every Wednesday morning from 8:30 to 9:30. You're all welcome. No experience necessary. We work with the Hebrew, but you do not need to have Hebrew fluency at all to enjoy the class. And it takes us about a year and a half to study each Parsha, because we go line by line and study every commentary of Rashi. We are just 2 classes away, we think, from finishing Parshat Vayechi, which finishes the book of Genesis, the book of Breshit, and we're going to have a big celebration, a big siyum to mark that moment. But we've been marinating in Vayechi for a long time. I brought some of this out in a sermon I gave from the Bima 2 weeks ago on the undulations. Sorry, there's a phone going off in my office, but we can ignore that. The undulations of Yosef's life and his arc, from being in a pit to being on top of the world, from his experiencing only darkness and bleakness to experiencing great light. There's a moment, a beautiful, poignant, exquisite moment at the end of Parshat Vayechi, where Yosef, after reassuring his brothers who were nervous that after Jacob, their father, died, Yosef would take revenge on them for the awful things they did when they put him in the pit, after reassuring them that no, he doesn't bear a grudge. He has forgiven them. We are one. We have inescapable arevut. You are fine with me. In one verse, the following two things happens. He both tells them, because apparently according to the Torah, Yosef, even though he was the second youngest brother, he dies first. He both tells them that after he dies, Ha'elohim pakodiv kodetchem, that God will remember you and will support you and nourish you the way I have been able to do in my post, which means that you who have been reliant on me, you who put me in a pit, have been reliant on me to help you get out of pits. And that's going to continue after my death. He also asks them for a very personal and historical favor. He gives them a command. Please make sure that I am brought out of Egypt, my bones, my remains, when we eventually leave. It's almost as if Yosef knows that something bad is happening in Egypt, otherwise he wouldn't have to make them swear. Please bring me up from Egypt. Just watch this happen. You put me in a pit. I've brought you out of a pit by being able to support you. You're going to bury me in the ground down low. And I am reliant on you, my brothers, who put me in the pit originally, to take me out, to lift me up. The verb is ve'elah, ve'alitem, lift me out of that literal grave and bring me up to the land of Israel. What Yosef does at the end of his life, and what the book of Genesis does at the end of its chapters, something that I discussed today with my dear friend and teacher, Rabbi David Ingber, it reminds us, or it pushes us, that it's not only the case that it's a holy act to forgive and not to bear a grudge, but to actually allow yourself to be reliant on the one that you once distrusted. It's a very big thing to trust someone whom you distrusted, to trust someone who earned your distrust in the way they acted. It's a biblical thing, it's a divine thing, to not only bring that situation up from the pit to ground level and say you're forgiven, but to deploy the other. That's the language that Rabbi Ingber shared with me through his teacher, Rabbi Zalman Schachter, Shalomi, to deploy the other in a personal or relational or spiritual obligation, and to make them feel not only that they're no longer in your doghouse, but they're needed. You're reliant on them. Yosef dies after living a life that was set in motion by being put in a pit by his brothers, asking his brothers, pleading with them, I'm reliant on you for taking me out and uplifting me. So the message that I want to share with you, Timbul Betham, before we go into the meditation, is that I'm certain there are people in your lives and there are people in my lives where we are in both sides of that relationship. People whom we distrust for good reasons, where it's now perhaps our spiritual obligation to bring them back into a place where we not only are no longer have people who have contempt for them, but can need them, can use them, can be reliant on them, can give them a sense of purpose in our lives, and vice versa. There are people whom we may have harmed, hurt with words, actions, people whom we put into a pit, who have reasons to distrust us. There might be something that we can do for them. There might be a way in which we can be and must be useful and purposeful in their lives. Inescapable arevut, a sense of being bound to the other, even the ones that we struggle with. I think that's the human condition. It's the Jewish condition. It's the communal condition at Timbul Betham. And it can be a sacred challenge for us this Shabbat. So, if you want to stay for a meditation, stay. And for the rest of you, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I look forward to seeing you soon. If you're still here, thanks for being here. nice to be able to just pause before we pause, rest before we rest, to have a moment of Shabbat before we have a day of Shabbat. So close your eyes. Listen to the quiet of your mind, even as sounds dance around you. Notice the feeling in your body that sets upon you almost instantly as you close everything else out and you attach to the beating of your heart and the rhythm of your soul. As your body gets light and heavy at the same time, you are floating and you are weighted and grounded. Take in the power of the silence and just the feeling of breathing with intentionality as a sorely welcome blanket upon your soul. Cuddle into it, if that image makes sense to you. And our meditation, which will be mostly a quiet one, extends from what I said before. This notion of inescapable arevut, which puts us in a place where we need to trust even those whom we have distrusted for good reason, where we need to find ourselves once again trustworthy in the eyes of those who have reasons to distrust us. In what way are you Yosef in that scene? Deploying those who were once your rivals in a sacred task. And in what way are you the brothers? Being both forgiven, reassured, and called to do something important, called to pull out of the pit the very one you might have nudged into another pit with your actions and your words. You're on both sides of that rope, hauling people out of their darkness, getting led out of the darkness, sometimes by the person you least expect to do it. Hold on to that rope this Shabbat. Hold on tight and pull when needed with gentleness and generosity, and allow yourself to be pulled. Sometimes no matter who is on the other end. With gratitude to the spiritual space that we make for ourselves and for one another. gratitude to being alive in this world that God gave us, and with gratitude for the moments of Shabbat that will come upon us soon. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. And I say Shabbat Shalom.